Okay, welcome back, everybody. 29 strong on this Matzah Shabbos here, Matzah Yom Tov here, as we broadcast from Greenwald Caterers in Somerset, New Jersey. And believe me when I tell you, one of the highlights of Yom Tov is to come with you and share time with you as we put what we say to meaning when we say that we have chayris, and of course, ein ben chayrin elamisha isik b'Torah. The true freedom is one that learns Torah. So we're putting our money where our mouth is, our mouth where our money is, and the Gemara says now, Amar Rav Yosef, you're right. When it comes to the redemption of Ma'aser Sheni Shel D'mai, he's more mekel. Amar Rav Yosef, Afal Pisha Mekel Rameir B'Pidyainai, even though Rameir is mekel when it comes to the pidyain of Ma'aser Sheni, Machmurhu Ba'achilasai. He is, however, stringent when it comes to the eating of Ma'aser Sheni. He holds that we're stringent even by Ma'aser Sheni Shel D'mai. The Tanya lo yitiru limkor demai ela lesitan bilvad. They only permitted to sell demai and put the onus of separating it on the buyer only for a wholesaler, because a wholesaler, he sells in big amounts and he gives extra heaps, and his profit is more, margin is low. So we shifted the onus of the separating demai on the buyer. However, ubalabayis, but a homeowner, benkach or benkach, whether he sells wholesale, whether he sells retail, tzarech la'aser, he has to take off meiser before he sells it. Divrei Meir. The Chacham say echad asitan, whether he's a wholesaler, ve'echad balabayis, whether he's a homeowner. When he sells moicher, he could sell it v'shaleach lechaveiroi, or send it to his friend v'noisen lo b'matana, and he doesn't have to be mafresh to d'mai. He puts it on the one that he sends it to. Ve'enoi choishish. So you see that Rameir is machmir when it comes to the eating of d'mai. So most of Ravina asked, we learned, halokeach min anachtaim, when you buy from a baker, so there the din is, ma'asa min achama ala tzeinenes, you could take off meiser from a hot batch for a cold batch, or min tzeinenes ala chama, a cold batch from a hot batch. We're going to see that this teaches us that you could be Torah min a ra ala yafa or min a yafa ala ra, because of course hot is better. Va'afilu midvusim harba, and you could take off even if it comes in different shapes. Now there is a worry. There's a worry that if it's in different shapes, maybe the baker got it from different suppliers, and one supplier took off truma, took off meises, and one didn't. But we see that Rameir is not makbid, and he says that even if it comes in different shapes, Rameir says that you could take off from one from the other, and you don't have to worry. So the Gemara says Bishleim enes alachama, that you could take from cold on hot, even though the cold is inferior. That's Kid Rabbi Eloi. How do I know that if I take truma from inferior for superior, that the truma is good? It's not the best. It's not the preferred way, but it's good truma. You won't bear a sin when you take from the cream, you take from the best. If you take it the other way, it's a sin. But if it's not holy, if it doesn't work at all, then it wouldn't be a sin. It would just be nothing. Why would it be a sin? So we see that if you take it and it's not the cream, if it's raw, it's a sin, but it's truma. Ella, but if Rav Meir is machmir by demai, ella afilu mitfusim harba, even from different molds, why should you be able to take it from different molds? Maybe the one was from a supplier that took off maisris, and one was from a supplier that didn't take off maisris, and then you would be Torah min aptur al achiv, which is not allowed. Leichish duma asi lafrushim min achiv al aptur or min aptur al achiv. Amar Abaye. So now Abaye says, and this is really very interesting. It's really a chazara of everything that we've been learning as we welcome in Dr. Guy for our 29th Zoomer of the evening. I'm telling you, this is really hot stuff. Says the Gemara, we're going now to go back and have a little review of the whole sugya. Amar Abaye, we started off with Rava quoting Rebbe Lazar, who wonders why in the Mishnah we have to add a fifth, even if Eddie ate Trumas Maises Shel Demai. So Amar Abaye, Rebbe Lazar Shapa Kokashel. You know, do we make Chizik L'Divrayim Kishel Taira? Are we makbid on a Durabanan like a Duraisa? Ushmuel loy shaper kamishanale. Abaye doesn't pull any punches. He says Shmuel doesn't answer. Shmuel answers, well, you see that Reb Meir is machmer that if Shelley brings a get and he doesn't say b'fani nichta b'fani nechtam, which is a drabanan, the child's a mamzer. The kashalei the Rebbe Lazar says misa b'dei shemayim, right? Rebbe Lazar is talking about eating Trumas Meiser, that's an issue of Misa B'dei Shemayim. But Shmuel answers him by comparing it to get. Get, and Eishes Ish, is an Issa Misa's Bezdin, which is more Chamer. Or Meshani Le Shmuel Misa's Bezdin. That's not a good comparison. Dil Meshani Misa's Bezdin, maybe Rameir is Machmer Kishal Torah by Misa's Bezdin, the Chamira. For Rav Sheshes Lo Shaper Kamoisavli. Rav Sheshes asks, what are you saying that Rav Meir made a chizik l'divrayim kishel Torah? You see, by Ma'aser Sheni Shel Demai, he allows you to deconsecrate silver onto copper. The Kamre inu misa, because Rav Meir says his din by Trumas Ma'aser Shel Demai, which is Misa B'dei Shemayim. Or Ma'aser for Rav Sheshes lav, and Rav Sheshes asks from the redemption of Ma'aser Sheni, which is only a lav of Leisuch Alecha B'Sharecha. What are you asking for Misa to a lav? Maybe he's not makber by a lav, but he's makber by Misa B'dei Shemayim. Ulamai de Ma'aser Rav Sheshes, and for that Rav Sheshes asks, Rav Yosef Shaper Kamishonale. Rav Yosef answers and says that he's makel by pidyon, by redemption, but he's machmer by eating. However, El Ravina Ademoisiv Menachtaim, he asks from a baker, and he says, what are you saying that Rameir is machmer by eating? By the baker, Rameir says that you could separate from different shapes of challah, from different molds, and you don't have to worry that they came from two different suppliers, one that took off ma'aser and one that didn't. L'sayale mipalter, bring a proof from the bread seller. Ditnan halekach min apalter, if you buy from a bread seller, ma'aser mikol dvos udvos divrei Rameir. Rameir says you have to separate from every mold, because each mold probably came from a separate supplier. So you see that Rameir is chayshish. You had a kasha by Nachtaim. There's an answer to that. Elamai Yislach L'Meimer, Palter, the bread seller, Mitreyu Tlasa Gavers oven. He buys from two or three different suppliers. Nachtaim Nami, the Nachtaim that Rameir is doesn't worry about it. It's because Mechad Gavros oven. He only buys from one supplier, and that supplier uses different molds, but he only buys from one supplier. Finally, the Gemara caps off. You had a kasha that Shmuel asked. You had a kasha. How could Shmuel say a proof that Rameir made a chizik l'divrayim kishol Torah from the case of get? maybe get is different because it's Misa's Bezdin, while eating Trumas Meiser, Trumas Meiser is only Misa B'dei Shemayim. Says, Shmuel wasn't bothered by that. Rava Shmuel Shaper Kamishani, like he compared them properly, Shem Misa Bailam, because he compares the name of Misa. He doesn't differentiate between Misa B'dei Shemayim and Misa's Bezdin. They both have the shame of Misa. And now, as we learn Torah Lishma, to give Nachas Ruach to our Creator, and to show the Rebbeinu Shalom that we're not just giving lip service to our counting Svira, but it is our desire, no matter what we are doing, and no matter where we are, even if we're in a place like Aventura, or Mexico City, or Marine Park, or Bela Kinwood, or,
Chicago.
Oh, in Chicago, that's right. He's pulling Marshall's, saving Marshall's bacon by representing Marshall, who is busy because since Yitzi Fuchs is in town, he's making sure he's painting the town red for Yitzi.
Also
Tannersville. And even in the four corners of the globe, like Tannersville, any man that listens to us in Tannersville must listen to us when they're in Brooklyn. If they even listen to us in Tannersville, there's absolutely no excuse not to listen to us in Brooklyn. But nobody would do such a thing. Now, Daf Nun Vav, Raylan remembers what I always say about nu. You know, when we talk about, people are talking in Shul Chas V'Shalom. I don't know if anybody knows of somebody like that. But people say nu. Now, what are they saying when they say nu? The first place that it says to be quiet during davening in Shulchan Aruch is in Siman Nun Vav in Hilchas Kaddish. So that's when Mark says nu, he means look up. I know that's what Mark knows that. But anyway, that's what he means. But anyway, Nu Mishnah, bottom of Nun Vav Amud Aleph, Elu Dvarim She'ein Lehem Oinah. The following do not constitute an Oinah, overcharging. Ha'avodim, servants, rashtaris, promissory notes when you're selling notes, hakarkois, real estate, vahekdeshis, and hektish. Also, ein lem tashlumei kefil, there's no kefil if you steal an eved, or if you steal real estate, like tashlumei abba v'chamisha, there's no payment of dalad v'hei in the event that you steal an animal of hektish. Shomer chinam ein a nishba, a shomer chinam, a unpaid watchman does not swear if he's watching real estate. A paid watchman ain't a mishalem, he doesn't have to pay if it's stolen or lost. Reb Shimon says, catch him that you're chayiv bachri yusan, shu chayiv bachri yusan. If he said hariyolai a neder, so if it gets lost or it gets stolen, he has to replace it. So it's still considered mom and bailim. Then yeshlem oina. Then there is overcharging. She'ena chayiv bachri yusan. But if he's not chayiv, he said harizeh. So if it gets lost, he doesn't have to replace it. Then ein lahem oina. Rabbi Yehuda says there also is no oina. Afa moichet seif Torah, if you sell a seif Torah or a behema or an animal or margolius or a gem, a pearl. Ein lahem oina. There's no overcharging. Amrulai, we're going to talk about this in much greater detail in the Gemara. Amrulai, they said to him, not so. Like Amru ela es elu. We only said by real estate, karkois, avodim, and shtaros and hektish, but not the three that you mentioned. So minanimili, how do we know that there's no oina by karkois? The Tan Rabbanan. If you sell merchandise to your friend, or you buy from the hand of your friend, it has to be bought from hand to hand. It has to be metaltalin, movable. That's not movable. It can't be transferred from hand to hand. It excludes slaves, which the Torah juxtaposes to karka, it excludes notes. Notes don't have an intrinsic value. When you sell merchandise, where you're selling the value, like a chess set. The gufay kani, it's sold and it's bought. Yotzu shtarais, you're not selling its intrinsic value. It's only a proof for something else. Shein gufan machar vein gufan kani. It itself is not sold. It itself is not bought for itself. Vein anoimden al raya shebehem. It's only a proof for something else. Mikan amru. But if you're selling the actual star for itself to use as a cork, then there is aina. If you sell your documents to a perfumer to use it to put on his perfume vials, so the Gemara says, Pshita, well that's obvious. He said that there's no aina for prutas, and a cork is not worth a silver piece. Kamash Malan, yesh aina leprutas, that there is aina for prutas. How do we know that there's no aina for hektish, hekteshais? Amakra, the pasuk says that we know that there's aina by hektish because it says we know that there's no aina by hektish because Amakra achiv, your brother achiv v'lay hektish. So now the Gemara says, so the whole raya is because it says oikana miyad amisecha. So does miyad mean literally from the hand? Does it mean the actual hand? That Sichain took all the lands of Moav from his hand. Did the king of Moav have his land in his hands? Hand means is rishus. Elam rishusai. Hakanami rishusai can mean from his rishus, and then it could be talking about karka too. Says Gemara, you think yad is not dafka? V'koleicha dichsiv yodai lav yodai mamashu. Does it not mean literally yad? But Tanya mimatzim timatzim yodai. If you find the gneva in his hand, ainli yali yodai gagai chatzer v'karfifa. I only know in his hand, on his roof, in his courtyard, in his enclosure. How do you know? But that's the only time in the Koster Rachman im himatzei timatzei. If you found it, no matter where it was. Where it says yadai, I might think it means yadai mamashu. The sutanya, v'nasan b'yadai, you put the get in her hand. I only know her hand. How do we know her rooftop, her courtyard, and her enclosure? That she's also divorced. Any giving. But time in the Koster Rachman of an Asan. Not bereshusai. Elakol yada yada mamishu. And that's why over here it means a hand, not karka, that can't from a hand to hand. I by sichain. V'shani hasam, there it can't mean anything else. V'shani hasam the lekalameimarachi. There, when it says that sichain took from the hand of Moav, it doesn't mean he took the land from his hand. There it has to mean bereshusai. The lekalameimarachi ela bereshusai. By Reb Zera. Reb Zera wants to know about Aina. Skiris yesh lo Aina or ein lo Aina. If I rent something to Mark, is there fraud or not? Memker Am Rachmana. Torah says only a sale. Avaloi skiris. Aidom aloi shna. Or maybe there's no difference. There's fraud even by a rental. So the Gemara says rental is also a sale. It's just a sale for a term. Amalei Abaye miksiv memker lailam. Does it cap it to a permanent sale? Memker stomaksiv. V'hai nami biyumei mechiru. Rental is a sale for 30 days. So there is Aina. Now the Gemara declares an interesting shayla. We said there's no Aina by karka. But let's say I put seeds in the ground and they didn't take root yet, and I sell them to Mark. Would there be Aina? Because the seeds didn't take root yet, so it's like they're in a jar. Or do they become bottled to the land? So let's see it inside. If I had wheat, I planted it in the ground, but they didn't take root yet. Yesh la'amayna or ein la'amayna? Can they be overcharged or not? Do we say, since they didn't take root yet, command the shadyan bekadada damyan, they're in a jug, v'yesh la'amayna, or dilma but linu al gavar, or maybe it's nullified to the land and there's no enough. Now, says the Gemara, hechidami, ilema de amar iu shadi bashita, if Mark told me to put 6 seeds in the ground, v'asu sadeh v'imrei deloy shada ba'ala chamisha, that I only put in a 5, and we're asking if there's fraud. Well, over there's a different reason, even less than fraud. Since we made up an amount, anything that's measured, weighed, or numbered, even if it's less than oina, it has to be put back. He said, put in what's needed. And at the end, I didn't put in what's needed. Is there overcharge or not? Do we say, do we say, I'm actually finished in about 1 minute. Do we say that, of course there's aina, since the seeds didn't take root, it's as if it was put in a jar, and therefore it's not karka, and there's aina. O dilma, but linu agavara, or maybe it's nullified to the ground, and there's no aina. Now we know we don't swear on karka, ein nishbaran al karkas. But let's say there's stuff put in the ground, but it didn't take root. Nishban alein or ein nishban alein? Is there an oath or not? Do we say command the shadi mekada damyan? Since they didn't take root, it's like it's put in a jar, v'nishban alein, and therefore it's considered metaltal and there's an oath. Or dilma but linu agavara, it's cancelled to the ground, v'ein nishban alein, and there's no shvur because ein nishban ala karkos. Okay, we're going to stop over here, Rabbi say. First of all, remember again, tomorrow night, Shir is at 8:30. Also, Rabbi say, interesting thing with Mishnah Yomis. We're not going to learn Mishnah Yomis tonight, because if you remember, because we fell behind, we got ahead of the calendar, because one perek was broken up into many Mishnayos in the Kahati, and we did it all as one long Mishnah. So we're now catching up to the Mishnah Yomis calendar. So we're not going to do 2 days, and then we're only going to be one Mishnah off. So tomorrow night we'll do one Mishnah, and then we'll be up in sync with the Mishnah Yomis calendar. We want to thank you very, very much for joining us, and wish everybody a wonderful Mayed, and have a good Mayed, everyone.
Thank you.